Welcome back, Dhamma Boots. Today is our Vesak celebration, so we're going to do things a lot differently. You will notice that I am not up front, and you will notice that there are multiple Buddhas up there. So what we are doing today is we are, in fact, for those who are not already up on what Vesak is, Vesak is a word that comes from Vaisakha, which is a month in the the traditional Indic calendar. Usually happens May-ish, and the full moon in that month specifically is what we're looking at. So keep that in mind as I go through and read through this whole long story, because it's an interesting story. It's definitely one that we should pay attention to. So, starting off, thus have I heard. More than 2,600 years ago, King Suyodhana and Queen Mahamaya ruled over a small kingdom known as the Sakyas, a warrior tribe in northern India at the time, in what is now modern-day Nepal. This was part of the Magadha Empire, and Queen Maya was known for both her beauty and for her intelligence, as well as her piety. Indeed, her name itself means vision, and she certainly lived up to her name, as we'll see in just a second. King Suyodhana was likewise gifted as a leader who, unlike the other kings of the time, was known as King of the Law because he actually ruled according to the law, not according to whatever whim he had. So, he was kind of a unique character in ancient Indian royalty. And this was the noble family from which the Buddha was going to be born. So that's quite the family to start off with, right? So how that came about, the story goes, one full moon night, sleeping in the palace, the queen had a vivid dream, a really vivid dream, or a vision, which of course is what her name means, right? So she's living up to her name already. She felt herself being carried away by these four heavenly spirits, these four devas, to a lake high in the Himalayas. And after bathing her in the lake to purify her, the devas clothed her in heavenly cloth, anointed her with perfume and flowers. And when this was complete, she looked outward and she saw this small white elephant holding a little white lotus flower in its trunk. She was like, okay. The elephant went round her 3 times and then entered her womb through the right side. And I should note that elephants are signs of incredibly good luck and good fortune, but none is quite so lucky as a white elephant or an albino elephant, right? So the elephant disappears into her womb, and the queen wakes up and she's like, whoa, this is a message. I don't know what it means, but it's clearly a good message. So she was kind of anxious about what it might mean, but she knew that it was good, and the next morning she went and told the king about the dream, and he was kind of puzzled as well, because white elephant, spirits bathing his wife in some lake. What? That makes no sense. So he's like, okay, I need some advisors. Come on, get me some wise men. Bring them in. And the wise men came in, and they heard the queen's story about her dream, and they immediately knew what it meant. And they're like, your majesty, this is super good luck. The Devas have chosen our queen as the mother of a very great being. Right? So naturally the king and queen are going to be happy about that. Any expectant parent wants to hear that their kid has been selected by heavenly beings to do awesome stuff in the world. It just sounds good, you know. So what do you do when you have a lot of money, a really good moral compass, and lots of good news? Well, you throw a party, that's what you do, right? You have a feast, you invite everybody, right? Everybody needs to be there to know about it. So they invited everybody, those who didn't have food or didn't have clothes, they gave that to them. And everybody just was like, this is a great time. We're having a great time, it's a great party. And then they started to wait eagerly for the birth to happen. And Queen Maya, from that day, after the big party, started living a pure life for herself and her unborn child. So she strictly regulated her diet, was completely chaste, and spent her time in prayer. And she enjoyed a happy and fairly healthy pregnancy. About 10 months after her dream of the white elephant and the sign that she would give birth, Queen Maya knew that it was time, her time to deliver was coming near. So she, as was the custom in those days, she tried to go back to her parents' house, and that specifically was what you did. You went back to your parents' house. You gave birth in your parents' house, not in your house with your husband or with your family. But you go back to your parents' house. And so she's on the road, and the king's like, okay, well, I'm going to send up a bunch of soldiers to make sure the road is clear. I'm going to send some with you. And amongst the entourage, those same 4 devas apparently also made an appearance and said, hey, we're here with you too. So, yeah, this is going to be a nice little trek. And because it was a fairly long trek back to her parents' house, they decided that they were going to stop somewhere. And the queen saw this nice grove with this specific tree known as the sala tree or the sala tree. And this tree has really fragrant blossoms, and it's really beautiful to see in person. They really do smell nice. They really do. So there's this nice grove with all these beautiful trees, and they've got their flowers, and they just smell awesome. And the queen is like, we're stopping here. So that's where they stopped. And that was a little place called Lumbini Park. And you can still visit this site in Nepal to this day. It still exists. And there's a tiny little shrine there. So they stopped and they rested. And almost immediately after they had taken their rest, the queen started to notice, hey, it's labor time. So they didn't make it to her parents' house. They tried. Didn't get there, but they tried. And so the delivery happened, and a little baby boy was born. And this was during the full moon in the month of Vesak. So yesterday, about 2,600 years ago, give or take.
Roughly.
And according to legends about this birth, various divine spirits witnessed this birth and rejoiced. So the first thing that I should note is that as the queen was delivering, baby did not touch, she delivered standing up, which was unusual. Not only that, but it was even more unusual because the baby never touched the ground. The devas who had been following her with her gently, as he came out, gently took him, made sure he did not touch the ground. And so other spirits who were just super overjoyed, even though it was the middle of the night and they've got this full moon going, they just made it as bright as if it were like noon. And they were like, okay, well, this is pretty unique. And the other spirit that I want to mention about, that I want to mention from that story is usually translated as a dragon god or a dragon deity, who was so overjoyed he decided, new baby, we gotta wash this baby. Because, kids come out and there's all kinds of weird stuff on them. That's what happens. So he sent a warm rain, and then a cool rain, and then a rain of flowers. So you've got warm water, you've got cool water, and you've got flower petals. What does that sound like?
Tea.
He's right on, actually. So, and we'll actually have a chance to kind of sort of emulate this a little bit. So the little statue to the left, I have prepared some really awesome white tea that was given to me by my monk friend when I was doing my presentation in Colombia, not last week, the week before. It's really great tea. And you guys will get to sample some of that during the Sangha time. It's really awesome tea. I kid you not, it's super good. Super high quality. But anyway, so we'll be pouring, it was warm water, it shouldn't be now, but it was warm water that I added cool water to, because once the tea is ready, you need to cool it off so you can not, deform whatever, yeah. And because it's tea, it already has flowers in it, right? So we have all three of the above, and we're just going to kind of emulate that a little bit. Symbolically, we're gonna symbolically take the dragon god's place and be like, there we go.
Washed.
According to legend, after that, the baby Buddha began to walk 7 steps forward, and this is, some parts of the tradition will say he walked 7 steps, one in each direction. Some will say that he walked 7 steps in one direction. And at each step, a lotus of flower appeared on the ground. He pointed one finger to the sky and one finger to the earth. And the cry that he gave is basically the same cry that every other child gives as soon as they're born. Although words are probably not part of that usually. And his cry essentially is translated as, in heaven and earth alone, I am the honored one. And so you'll see that with most newborns, as soon as the baby is born, there's nothing else going on in the world for that family. There's nothing else. Everything is that little baby right there. There's nothing else more honored than that little baby at that time, right? So that's the baby Buddha saying, all right, I've arrived. I'm here. So after the birth of her baby son, Queen Maya immediately returned back to the king, or she immediately sent word back to the king. She hadn't made it to her parents' house, but given what happened, I think that's not so bad. And as she rested, word was sent back, and the king was overjoyed, just absolutely overjoyed. And so he waited until the queen and the new baby got back, and they had another feast, because why not? Why wouldn't you want another feast? Food is huge, right? So they had another feast, and they invited all the seers and wise men to come and see the baby and figure out, as was tradition, see what his life would be, kind of foretell what his life would be. And they all came to this conclusion that he was going to be one of two things. He was either going to be this awesome, powerful king who would, like his father, rule by the law and would take over the entire world, which obviously made the king quite pleased. He was like, yay, good times. Because what king doesn't want to take over the world, right?
Right.
Or he'd be a fully enlightened holy man.
Spoiler alert. Guess what happens?
So obviously the king, I'll actually go into Maya's part of the story a little bit later, maybe next week, as a late Mother's Day thing. Not really fitting for today though. So what the king did then is he trained his son, right? Trained him in combat, trained him in leadership, trained him in how to control things, how to be a king. And the Buddha, he kind of went along with it, but his heart really wasn't in it. He just wasn't. It wasn't his thing, right? So at 29, after his father made him get married and have a kid, he decided, okay, this is enough. He left home, cut off his hair, which was, in those days, that was a huge deal. That was a sign that you were completely renouncing all of normal everyday life. You were totally giving up on day-to-day basic human existence like normal people. He was saying, I'm not a normal person anymore. I'm totally done with that. I'm going off on my own to learn the truth. And so he did. He began to seek out the truth that would lead him past the suffering, which was what was vexing him so much. So 6 years and a multitude of teachers later, the Buddha became determined to finally attain the truth and to reach enlightenment and to find a way to solve that suffering. So he sat under the Bodhi tree, and you can still go and see a descendant of that exact same tree. Although recently some vandals did try to burn it down. They didn't succeed, but they tried. But so sitting under this tree, the Buddha went into a deep meditation. And as he did this meditation, right, there's really two stories that are important. One, because it kind of gives us an idea of how the Buddha operated and what the world around him was thinking at the time. And then one, because it kind of illuminates exactly what was going on. So the first one is King Mara, the king of the demons, said, "Oh no, we can't have none of this. Nobody is getting enlightened on my watch." And so he sent this big giant deluge, this big giant storm to try and wash the Buddha away from his seat so that he would no longer be meditating. Right? But the Buddha did have some allies, he did have some help. And so, unlike in certain faiths, we tend to have actually a fairly strong relationship with snakes. Imagine that. So the reason for that really comes down to, as the Buddha was sitting there meditating, this giant king cobra decided, nope, we're not going to have this. The Buddha can do what he wants. We're not going to let the king of demons get in the way. So he coiled himself underneath the Buddha, lifting the Buddha up above where the water was, and coiled his, cobra hood, right, around the Buddha, so the Buddha would not be, driven away from the meditation by the rain that was pouring down, kind of like an umbrella. So you'll see that if you go to most Asian countries, you'll see the Buddha underneath this big giant cobra. And it's not a bad thing. It's kind of weird for a lot of people, but that's what it is.
Right.
So the second story, or the second part of this, is Mara did not give up. The king of demons was like, all right, that's all fine and well, but we're not going to give up on this. We're doing this thing. I'm taking him down. And so Mara, king of demons, went and challenged the Buddha. He said, I'm already enlightened. You can't be enlightened because I already have that. And the Buddha was like, okay, prove it. And so Mara, king of demons, he's got all of his demon buddies, and he's like, yeah, we're going to do this. And so all of his demon buddies are like, he's totally enlightened. He's totally got this. You can't have it because he's already got it. And then naturally the king of demons is like, okay, well, I proved my case. How about yours? And the Buddha just reached down with his hand and said, this good firm earth will vouch for me. And there was immediately a giant earthquake, scaring off all the little demons. And the king of demons was like, all right, that's enough. I'm out of here. And so the Buddha, at that point, could carry on meditating, and he did. Finally coming to reach that, or attain that enlightenment that he'd been looking for so long, right? And as this enlightenment or awakening is traditionally shown as a glow, we'll be kind of lighting small candles near the Buddha in the middle to see if we can't kind of emulate that little halo effect. May or may not work, but we're going to try it anyway. That's also us offering appreciation for the light that he lit that shows us the path so that we can practice and try and find what he found. So, and what he came to see became known as the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. He saw karma and how the three poisons and attachment cause people to be stuck in this recurring cycle where you just keep going around and around and around and doing more and doing more and doing more. You just never get out of it. It's all suffering in various forms. It's all, this cycle of suffering, and he found a way out of it. He found a way to be liberated from that continual going around and going around and going around and never getting anywhere. And he did that, again, under the full moon in the month of Vesak. So we've got two, for those who are keeping track. And after he had found that truth under that moon, he was tempted to just not even teach anybody. He was like, okay, nobody's going to understand this. Nobody's going to be able to figure out what I've got here. And at that point, the local gods of that region were like, oh, no, we can't have this. He's figured this out. We need this. So he went about, he was sitting there meditating, and they came and asked him to teach. And most of the time he said no. And finally he was persuaded by one of them saying, they may not get everything, but they might get something. And that start might be what they need. It might be able to kickstart everything else. So, with that, the Buddha said, okay, even if they don't get everything, even if they don't know what I'm really talking about, I can see the point in that. I can see the value in that. And out of compassion, I will do so. So he started teaching. And he was 35 at the time, and he taught for the next 45 years. But as with all living things, eventually it comes time to pass on. We all die someday. So the Buddha ate a final meal, lay on his side, and gave a final teaching, summarizing everything that he had taught. And at the end, he asked those who were present, mostly his monks, if they had any final questions. When the monks asked who should lead them after the Buddha's passing, the Buddha responded, be a lamp unto yourselves, and live according to the teaching and the discipline. His last words to the Sangha, to the monks, were, behold, O monks, this is my last advice to you. All things in the world are changeable. They are not lasting. Work hard to gain your own salvation. Basically saying, nothing is forever. You got to do this on your own. You got to make this happen. And then he entered into a very deep meditation under the full moon, again in the month of Vesak, and passed on. His body was cremated, and the ashes were given to those who were present. So you can still find temples all across Asia that say, oh, we have a tooth of the Buddha, or oh, we have a thigh bone of the Buddha. Do they? Who knows? I sure don't. But how we will be kind of symbolically reenacting that is through the charcoal and the incense. We'll be lighting the incense as a way of kind of symbolically cremating the Buddha after his entrance into final nirvana, final enlightenment. But so yeah, that's why that whole story, that big old long story that I just told, is why Vesak is so important to the Buddhist world, because we have the Buddha's birth, we have his enlightenment, and we have his passing, all under the same moon, all under that same full moon. So it's a big day for us. How about we celebrate? I'll kind of give you directions, or at least give you an example to follow, if you will. One for the warm rain, one for the cool rain, and the last one for the rain of flowers. sort of looks like it would, but it didn't. So. My apologies on the charcoal being somewhat particular.
Just out of curiosity.
So it's a special ceremonial charcoal that they make for temples specifically. Comes in this little package.
Just out of curiosity. If I do something wrong, please help me.
The intent is always more important than the performance.
It's true. Yes, that's true in most of it.
Let me see if I can get these. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to move into the meditation. And it would really be awesome if this charcoal would actually light, because then we could get the incense going, and the incense would add to the meditative ambiance, as it were. I think next year I'd probably just make it regular charcoal that actually I can expect to light. Come on. Okay, in which case, I'm just going to try and light the charcoal itself, light the incense itself.
There's something.
It's pretty terrible when you sit here and spend like 4 minutes trying to light the charcoal. It's not even.
Starting.
Put a whole bunch in it. Hoping that that helps.
It's just that small little corner. There it goes, one little corner.
Looks good.
If we can't get it delayed. Close enough. We'll try putting a little bit more on the top, just because the way this usually works is you put some little bit of incense on top, and it just naturally burns up its own accord. Yes, victory. Okay, So we're going to move directly into the meditation now that we have the incense finally going. I know I'm being silly.